So last week what we would have started with is the communication channels. We would have described what is a communication channel, and we would have started looking at the characteristics that make up a communication channel. That is the transmission mode, the direction of the data flow, and the transmission media. Last week we only looked at the cables. This week we're going to look at the wireless part of the transmission media, and then we're going to look at what is intranet and extranet. Alright, to get us started, let's have Akhilesh, you could read wireless transmission.
Remember, wireless media include microwave, satellite, and infrared methods. Microwave signal has a very short wavelength, hence the microwave. These powerful signals can be projected over long distances over a direct line of sight. The path between any 2 points, such as antennae. Satellite transmission is similar to microwave transmission. However, instead of using 2 microwave dish antennae that are close to each other, it uses a satellite that is located in space.
Good. So what is wireless transmission? Wireless transmission will include means such as microwave, satellite, infrared, and so on. So those are some of the methods you can use for wireless transmission. Now, what is a microwave? It's basically a signal, a very short signal that is being sent. Short in terms of wavelength. Yes, short in terms of wavelength, hence the word micro. So it's a wave, but it's a microwave, hence it's small in terms of its wavelength, and that is how the signal is being sent. Now, these signals, they are sent in direct line of sight. So that is why, for example, if at your home, your router that you have at home is using microwaves in order to send its signal. Now, in order for you to get a proper signal from your router, have any of you noticed that the closer you are to your router, the stronger the signal?
Yes, sir.
Well, that is because you are in direct line of sight with that router. That router can clearly see your device. So that is why you get a strong signal, because you are in direct line of sight. You can see one another. But the second you go outside of the room that the router is in, and some walls come between the two of you, what starts to happen? What starts to happen with the signal?
Start getting weak.
Right. The signal starts to get weaker because there is now objects between you and between the router and your device. I'm trying to find an image. Alright, so we can use this as an example. So in this image here, we have an antenna. So for those of you who have e-networks as your internet connection, or you're using some form of e-networks, maybe cable or so on, you would notice you would have an antenna on your house. Oh, let's use your TV's antenna, because that's wireless technology also. So for your TV, for those of you who still watch TV, or for those of you who can't remember, when a channel is not clear, when you're watching, say for example, channel 13, 28, whatever channel, and the channel is not clear, what do you do with the antenna?
So buy a new one.
Return.
Wow. Rich by Morano.
Precisely the signal.
I guess to get the signal.
Yes, you turn the antenna until you get the signal. And why are you turning the antenna? You're turning it because of that direct line of sight. Your antenna needs to basically be looking at the TV station antenna. That's why you're turning the antenna, so that it can point towards the TV station antenna, so that it can receive that signal. So the same thing with your router in your home. If there's anything between your device and the router, then that will interfere with the signal. Oh, this is a nice image here. Let me see if this one is video. Okay, this was not that clear, but it should give you an idea. So notice they have the router here on the ground, and this person is speaking here. So this could be a receiver. Just imagine it's some sort of device, a router or something, giving off a signal, and having it at the bottom here would be the wrong location, because look at how many people are here. There is no direct line of sight. Even people can affect the signal, the wireless signal, the microwave, from being transmitted. So because it needs more power to pass through these objects, so having it at the top here to have direct line of sight would be more effective, so that you get a better signal. So your router is not the only device that makes use of microwaves. We even have satellites and so on that use microwave technology. Does any one of you know that you can get internet connection from satellites?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Very nice. So I think this will work. So this is an example of how persons get internet connection. So the internet service providers on the right hand side here. So say for example this is GT&T. Your ISP, internet service provider, is who provides your internet. So they're going to provide the internet, and what they do, they have a strong antenna, and they're going to send that signal to the satellite. And that satellite now is going to send that signal to the home that has another antenna to receive that signal. So this is how that connection would look, and that's how this home would get internet connection, through that microwave technology there. So these are the large antennas that would be pointing towards the satellites that are in space to give them that signal, so that we can get it back here wherever we're located. Good. So the next two paragraphs, let's have Anthony.
The two most common types of inferred communications used in schools are line of sight and scattered broadcast. Line of sight communication means that there must be an unblocked direct line between the workstation and the transceiver. If a person walks within the line of sight while there is a transmission, the information would need to be sent again. This kind of obstruction can slow down the wireless network. Scattered inferred communication is a broadcast of inferred transmission sent out in multiple directions that bounces off walls and ceilings until it eventually hits the receiver.
Good. So, as I mentioned before, the line of sight, it needs that line of sight. It needs that direct line of sight. You must be able to see both devices. But in some cases, devices might not be able to see each other clearly. So in those cases, you could use a broadcast, a scattered broadcast, so as to send the signal across. I'm looking for an image that could give you guys an idea. So in this image here, can't scroll, zoom. Give me a second, let me open it back. Why can't I not scroll? Anyway, so in this image here, the top half, where you have line of sight, this line here, imagine it as a mountain. And in order for you to send a signal from one side of the mountain to the other side of the mountain, for a line of sight, you basically have to put your devices above that mountain. It has to be above the highest part, because it has to be in direct line of sight. You need to see each other. But with a scattering broadcast, the one at the bottom, they don't need to see each other. You can scatter the signal basically, and the other side should be able to receive not as strong as the line of sight, but they should be able to at least receive some of the signal so that they can transmit data. So this is how the scattering would look. They don't have to be in line of sight, but they can still be able to send a signal, even though, but it won't be as strong as being in the line of sight. So, for example, when you guys are doing Bluetooth, if you're Bluetoothing a song between two phones, how close would you put those phones together?
Sir, for them to touch each other.
Sometimes we might even put them one on top of each other, hoping that they will transfer faster, right? So with that technology, line of sight, it needs to be, the devices need to be able to see each other. Now, so that's it for wireless transmission. So note for the wireless transmission, we have microwave, we have satellite, infrared, and these are just the methods they use. What would make use of the method would be the wireless transmission. So for example, your Wi-Fi is going to make use of microwaves, satellite internet connection, then we have Bluetooth, we have infrared, and all of those. So now we're going to look at what is intranet and what is extranet. Alright, Arifa, You can read the first two paragraphs.
Intranets and extranets. The success of the Internet has led businesses and many organizations to set up intranets. Many schools now have their own intranet. An intranet is a private network based on Internet standards but only available within a business or organization. No one outside the business or organization is able to access the intranet. A company can set up an intranet and allow its workers to send messages to each other and browse to access company information such as web pages. It can also be used for staff training. An intranet is not directly connected to the internet, but some intranets do allow access to the internet via so-called gateway computers. For users of an intranet, it looks and functions just like a website.
Good. Alright, we take the first paragraph for now. So, what is the intranet? An intranet is basically like if you're using the internet. So, all of you are familiar with using the internet. You open a browser, you go to Google, you type in what you want, cat photos. So, the intranet is basically a private internet, you can say, a private network. So, if you do not want persons to see what you have on this network, remember we're learning about networks. A network is a means that we use to transmit data, to share data and information. So say, for example, you're a company, you're an organization, you don't want other persons to be able to access your data. So if you want your employees to access the data, but you don't want the rest of the world to access the data, then you can't put it on the internet because then everyone will be able to see it. So a private network called the intranet can be used to share those information. So only persons within that organization, that is within that business. So remember, we learned about network configuration. We learned about network configuration and we learned about the LAN. Now each business, each organization, they are going to have their own LAN network so that they can communicate, so that the devices can communicate with each other. So using that same LAN network in the organization, what the company can do now is create an intranet, or basically their own private network, so that they can share data, resources, and so on. It functions just like if they're on the internet, but it's just that only those within the organization can be able to access this network. Let's see, Gitanjali, you can take from intranet to the last bullet point. Jonathan?
Yes, sir.
From internet to the last bullet point.
Intranets may, depending on how they're set up, consist of local area networks, LANs, and wide area networks, WANs. A firewall is used to stop computers on other networks, including the internet, accessing the intranet. Instead, all communication is through a proxy server that is outside the network. The proxy server acts as a gatekeeper, filtering internet sites and deciding what files or messages should come into or go out from a computer network. Intranets are used by many businesses and other organizations to distribute documents, share information, distribute software, access databases, help with staff training, facilitate group working, and enable teleconferencing.
Good. So, one thing I did not look at is the gateway computer. So the intranet, it actually doesn't have access to the internet. Normally, it does not have access to the internet because you want to keep the data that is inside of the intranet private so that persons outside do not see your data. Remember, you're an organization. You don't want persons to see what you're going about doing. For example, if you're Apple, you don't want Samsung to know what are your designs and so on. So you're going to keep your intranet private. Now, but what if you want your staff to be able to access the internet? Well, they're going to need a device called a gateway computer, or they're going to need a firewall or a proxy server. Those are some names the devices can have, so that your computers now will communicate with this firewall, with this proxy server, and that device is going to say what can you access on the internet and what information from the internet can be able to come into the intranet. So basically, it's like a gatekeeper. It's going to say that you could only search for this, you could only search for that, you can't go to Facebook, you could only open Google, and it's going to say only what kind of data can come in. Only emails can come in, or it's going to block all the YouTube videos, it's going to block Facebook, but only emails can come in. So that's an example of how they can still be connected to the internet, and having that proxy server, that firewall, is going to filter what information can be sent, what information can be received. So why do we use the intranet? We use it to distribute documents. Remember, we're talking about a company and organization, and it might be a very large building, sometimes taking up a very large area. So like for example, University of Guyana. Look how many, for those of you who ever visited the University of Guyana, you would know there's many buildings on a very large campus. So in order for them to distribute documents, they can use the intranet to do that. Instead of physically going to the different buildings, share information, distribute software, access database, help with staff training, group work, teleconferencing, and so on. So having that intranet, basically having a network, a private network that connects all of your employees together, all of your staff, all of your devices together, you can be able to carry out all of these tasks, share all these information, access all these information, resources, and so on. Are you guys following so far what is an intranet?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Good. Okay, we have two more paragraphs on intranet. Kavani, you can take those two. Kavandi.
Some intranets, right?
Yes.
Intranets are popular as they are less expensive to build and manage than other types of private networks. Also, users of intranets are familiar with how to use them because they look and behave like websites on the internet. They save time and on staff training. More and more schools are setting up their own intranets. Internal school information, such as examination timetables, student changes, sports teams, and results, can be readily shared with staff and students. Each department in the school can have its own intranet page for pages, along with relevant information for students, such as revision guides and homework tasks. Students also have the opportunity to share their work with others.
Good. So notice at the bottom here, they said that in this example of a school implementing the intranet, it says that each department in the school can have its own intranet page. And then at the top here, it says that for users, an intranet looks and functions just like a website. So that's how the internet functions. It's like if you're on the internet, you go to web pages, you open your browser, you go to web pages and you find information, you read, you watch videos and so on. It's the same the intranet is configured basically. It's like if you're still on the internet, but only that you can only access what your company wants you to see. So like for example this school here, if they set up an intranet, they can set up web pages so that you can see timetables, you can see room numbers, sports teams, the results, maybe report cards, student information, and so on, so that you can see what they want you to see. But it's like if you're using the internet basically. And that is why the internet, it saves time and money and staff training, because you can just have someone upload the information on the internet basically, keeping the network up to date so that others can see the information, instead of training staff how to put their data into a database, how to send that information, whereas internet would be easier to manage by one person or multiple persons. Alright, so let's look at what is the extranet now. Alright, before we look at that, let me see if I find quickly a diagram of an intranet. Okay, I think this will work. Good. So we're going to use this network diagram here. So on the right hand side in this circle, you're going to see the intranet. The intranet is the private network. So the LAN network that the business or the organization is going to have, computers connected to each other, we have some servers and so on. So that's the LAN network. Notice it looks like a star because that's how they're going to configure it. But notice here they have the firewall and the internet server. So this is the gatekeeper here, and the gatekeeper is what the local area network, the intranet, is going to go through so that they can be able to access the internet. So notice over here in the right hand we have an intranet server. This is what is going to be serving all of the information, all of the data that the other computers are going to be seeing on the intranet. So that's how they get to see their information. Just like the internet has computers that allow you to see, basically servers that allow you to see what is on Google, what is on YouTube. Your intranet is also going to have a server that is going to serve you information about your business, about your organization, and so on. So let's now look at what is the extranet now. Let's have Kezia.
Yes, sir.
Extranets. One, once intranets were developed, it became clear that businesses and other organizations sometimes wanted to allow others, such as suppliers and customers, to have limited access to their internet. This would lead to a closer relationship with customers, a better exchange of information, and improved efficiency. Therefore, extranets were developed. Extranets allow authorized outsiders limited access to an internet. Not everyone is allowed access to an extranet. Only authorized users are allowed. They must have valid usernames and passwords and an identity that establishes which part of the extranet they can access.
Good. So, what is the extranet basically? If we look back at the image here, you're going to notice that it has it right to the bottom here, the extranet. So the intranet is your private network, what the business, what the organization is going to have. I remember inside of that private network now, you are going to have your private information, your private data. That's why you have an intranet, because you don't want the internet, the cloud here, to be able to see that information. But sometimes you might want a specific group of persons to see your information. For example, if you're a business, you might want your customers to see your information. Like for example, if you're a car company, you might want them to see what cars you have in stock and so on. If you're not only for customers, sometimes your suppliers also, you might want them to be able to access certain information to see if you have if you're stock basically, if you're going out of stock with any one of their supplies or some your parts or something. So you want some sort of group of persons to be able to see some sort of data in your intranet. So that is why you would create an extranet. The extranet now is going to allow those outside persons, that outside network, to be able to access whatever you would allow them to access in the internet. You're not going to tell them to access the entire internet. It's going to be the same like the internet. You're going to set up a firewall and you're going to say that, look, you could only access this file, stocks folder. This stocks folder, if you go into it, you can only see what stocks we have in the inventory, if we need this car part, if we need this engine part, or so on. So that's how you can be able to access. So that's how the firewall is going to work similarly to the internet. It's going to work similar for the extranet. It's going to prevent them from only being able to access what you want them to access. It's not because you create the internet, they can access all of your information. You can still prevent them from accessing only what you want them to see. So organizations might want to allow others, such as the suppliers, the customers, to have limited access. So they can only see what you want them to be able to see. So unless you allow a person, unless you authorize a person or a network, they will not be able to access your intranet. You need to first authorize these persons to access your intranet. And you would authorize them by giving them usernames and passwords so that they can be able to access. So unless they have these correct credentials, which is their username, password, and whatever the company might put in place, only those persons can access the intranet. Let's take the other paragraph, Crystal. Alright, Crystal, you can thank you for your effort. Seems your microphone is not working, or hopefully that is the case. Morano, you can help her out.
Yes, sir. Extranet cable business uh, enable businesses to work closely together. A car manufacturer, for example, might develop an extranet to allow all of its various suppliers of tires, lights, window screens, seats, and so on, and what? Car showrooms. So it's very familiar. Check, okay. On car showrooms to keep it very close contact regarding orders and deliveries. An extranet could be used to share information not available to the public, as well as to exchange data and to develop joint training programs. Data can exchange using electronic data interchange (EDI). Electronic data interchange is a special way to transfer business documents, such as orders and invoices, between computers. The aim of EDI is to speed up communication between businesses and other organizations, and eventually to do away with paper transactions. EDI often involve putting the data into special computers code to stop other people looking at the data.
Good. So, as I mentioned before, with the example of the car manufacturer, that is why you would create the extranet so that they can share that information. So, what is the EDI? Well, the EDI, the electronic data interchange, it is a special way to transfer the documents, such as the orders, the invoice, and so on. Why do we use this EDI? Because the last line here says in the last paragraph, it often involves putting the data into special computer code to stop other people from looking at the data. So basically, because remember, even though you're sharing this information with some other company or customers and so on, the information is still private. So you don't want any and all persons to still be able to see it, even though you are sharing it to persons that should be able to. So you're going to still put a method in place, which is the electronic data interchange, so as to try to prevent unauthorized persons from looking at the data. Good. And we're finished with the chapter. For the homework, wondering what method to use for the homework. For the homework, you're going to complete it in your books. We're not going to do it like last term. You're going to complete it in your books. Ensure you answer each question. As notice, it's saying in some of the questions to explain, to name, and some will be described and so on. So go into detail. Try to remember these questions. The answers are right inside of the chapter. You don't have to do any extra research. If you want to, no problem. The answers are right inside of the chapter. The questions are basically testing you to see if you can remember or if you understand the concepts that you would have learned. So answer them to the best of your ability. Fully describe the answers to the questions. Next week during class, what we're going to do, we're going to look at the answers to the questions. So complete it for next week. So, in review of chapter 3.1, what do you mean? What happened to it, Suraj? Well, in the meantime, so in review, what we looked at for chapter 3.1, we basically look at computer networks. So we looked at why we need the computer network to share, receive data, resources, and so on. We looked at some terms, upload and download. We looked at configurations. Notice we have back the configurations right here. Point to point and broadcast. We just learned that in the wireless, that some of the connections can be point to point, which is line of sight, and you can broadcast the information so that other persons can be able to see it. But in this configuration, they're talking about only 2 computers in the point to point, and in the broadcast, multiple persons can access the data. For the configurations, we looked at what is a PAN, what is a LAN, a MAN, and a WAN. And in addition, there is the wireless LAN. We looked at what basically we need to create our network. We need cables, we need a network card, hub, a server, operating system, and so on. Remember, the hub is replaced by a certain device, which is the switch. Then we looked at the network layout. We looked at the star, the ring, the bus. Remember the shape. And then we ended with the communication channel, the transmission modes, and what is intranet and extranet. Alright, so I'm going to give you guys the rest of the class to finish off writing your notes and complete your homework for next week. Do you guys have any questions on anything we looked at for this chapter?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay. I hope you guys understand this chapter about network. Next week, after we review the homework, which is these questions here, after we reviewed it, we're going to be starting 3.2, which is web technologies. Alright, if you guys don't have any questions about anything we looked at, this is the end of our class. Enjoy the rest of your day.